Hello, my name's Adam Ferry. I'm an occupational therapist and one of the directors of the Occupational Therapy Service. The purpose of this video is to explore some of the concepts in designing accessible spaces for someone with an arthritis. Well, as we're all aware, arthritis is a very umbrella term and covers a vast number of conditions that present in a very different way, as we've explored in more depth in the Designing Accessible Spaces guide for AKW. However, some of the things I want to cover while we're in this space: showers and shower heads. So often we see people using this kind of shower, and someone with arthritis, where one of the key concepts is joint protection and how we ensure that the person isn't applying undue pressure or in postures for long periods of time that exacerbate their condition. And we'll see people pressing the shower to move it up and down, and actually that is a very complex and fine motor skill. There's very much around our grip here between the thumb and the first finger, and it takes a fair bit of strength to be able to do that. As occupational therapists, what we need to be able to do is actually explore how we adapt that, and what this is designed for is palm press. So palm press down and the shower head drops. No need for those fine motor skills, no need for pressure through joints or anything like that, and up in exactly the same way. The other thing for us to consider here is when we change the flow on the shower head. Whilst we are using some fine motor skills here, this shower head, unlike a lot that you'll see domestically, it is incredibly easy to move and change. So again, design that is in place specifically for someone with an arthritis or other condition that may affect their ability to use their joints effectively. So staying on this theme of showers for someone with arthritis, again, it's important for us to use our activity analysis and apply that to what's available for the person with arthritis. So if we take a look at these three thermostatic care showers, they are very similar in their overall design, but you can see quite clearly how very different controls, and that's not just so that there are three different showers. AKW designed them specifically for people with different needs. So someone with arthritis who may be unable to twist or turn, or may be able to do that, but actually we're looking at very specific joint protection, you might need to think about other features or other ways in which they control that. If we miss out this one for now, if we go straight to the smart care, it may be that whilst this is fantastic for someone with dementia or maybe a more significant visual impairment, they're still needing to press the button, putting pressure through joints. It may or may not be the one that's most suitable for them. The smart care with the lever, however, again, supports more gross movement. So much like the grab rail we talked about, rather than having to grip and turn, which of course the person can, it can very much be palm based and turn. A much simpler movement from a motor skill perspective. So it's really important that we understand the condition, we understand specifically how that condition affects the person, where the pressures within how they function present themselves, and match those needs to what's available on the market. Something like the smart care with the lever came out very highly recommended in recent testing we did in a group with people with arthritis, with the support of Versus Arthritis, an established national charity. So I would encourage you, if you're working with someone with arthritis, to consider all of these options, but specifically whether this shower with the lever alleviates some of those pressures for the person you're working with. Three of the key things for us to consider in designing accessible spaces for someone with arthritis are the person's anthropometrics, so their body measurements, the lengths of their arms, legs, joints, etc., because that has a huge impact on posture, and therefore leading into the second concept, which is joint protection, and thinking about where the person places their hands, the angles it creates on their wrists, and how does that feel for the person with arthritis. How repetitive is that strain, and again, what impact does that have? And the other thing sometimes that we forget with arthritis, because we think of it very much as a orthopedic based condition is the fatigue that somebody with arthritis will feel from either being in pain or discomfort, or depending on what type of arthritis they have. For example, if it's an autoimmune based condition, the condition itself is encouraging fatigue. So the things we need to think about there are, where are there spaces for the person to sit and rest? Something that we tend to consider a lot when we're supporting someone in accessible design. And that could be as simple as a perching stool, right through to how do you design the layout of a kitchen and where is the dining table with chairs, say, for example. That's the easy bit. But actually fatigue is much more than that. Somebody who has to support their posture in a specific way for a length of time, the muscles will naturally weaken. So this isn't just about how the person walks from space to space or how long the task takes. It's thinking about how we make the movement and the task more efficient in its more minute details and components. So for example, if I'm standing at the workspace, I'm holding onto the workspace for support. This space is actually a little too low for me. Now I could work and function here, but it might cause me to put too much pressure through my shoulders because the bench space is a little bit too low. A few things to work on there. Active motion through AKW would allow me to raise the bench up to the perfect height for me, which would be around here. I could function completely independently and safely. I'm not putting any pressure through my joints. From an anthropometrics perspective, that's a great height for me. It also means that everything's where I need it to be. So active motion really supports the flexibility and fluctuations of not just the person with arthritis, but other users within the household. So as we've talked about, joint protection is a key element to accessible design for someone with arthritis. That's considering those three key components: the anthropometrics, the joint protection, and fatigue. All three of those are really key components in designing any space, whether it be the kitchen or the bathroom or anywhere else within the home, whilst understanding that they're not mutually exclusive. Affecting one affects the other. Supporting one positively is likely to support the other positively, but any recommendations we make could also have a negative impact somewhere else. So bear that in mind. If we're using active motion, for example, how does something like this affect my ability to stand and to be fatigued from a muscular perspective, but also how does it affect joint protection? From an anthropometric perspective, here the angles I'm trying to create reduce the pressure through the joints and allow me to function independently and safely. As we've already mentioned, something like active motion is can play a really important part in kitchen design for someone with arthritis. We've looked previously at the bench space, but exactly the same could be said for cupboard spaces. So rather than the person having to reach, which puts a lot of pressure through my shoulders here, I'm thinking about my anthropometrics and joint protection. I can either use a controller to bring the cupboard down and back up, reducing the need to flex, extend, and put undue pressures through joints when I'm carrying something that are more peripheral. But I can also use cupboard-based buttons for that. Now, one of the things you do have to think about there is how the buttons are used. Is the person with arthritis able to press those buttons for prolonged periods of time? Which is why we've mentioned previously about recommendations having an impact on other things. So whilst this is supporting my ability to get something from the top shelf without the need to reach and therefore putting pressure through my shoulder, what I'm doing is using my thumb to press the button. So from an activity analysis perspective, which of those things is more important to that particular user? So you know the person, they know themselves, you've applied the activity analysis, now it's about looking for the right product to meet those needs.